1, 2, 3, 4. Pedagogy a go-go. Pedagogy go-go-go. Hello and welcome to Pedagogy a Go-Go, a podcast about how we engage with learning and why. This is Season 5, Episode 1, Hope and AI, with Dr. Abigail Michelini, and we are your hosts, Gina Turner and Kelly Allen. Welcome, Kelly.
Hey, Gina. So good to be here.
You are now the official co-host.
I know. I fought it for so long, and thankfully Tom was so gracious to be that co-host person. But Tom has moved on, yes. And it's interesting. I went and listened back to the last episode that we did, and during that episode, he's like, "Yeah, so I have this new position at the college," and then like years go by, and now Tom. I reached out to him before we did this, and I was like, "So Tom, like, what are you doing, man?" Because I'm sure that it's just something like fabulous. And then he's like, "Let's just say that I'm living the dream of being the international man of mystery, hang gliding and mountain climbing, spending time on sandy beaches." I'm like, "Tom, we're going to go with that." So, Tom, if you're out there, miss you, love you, and hope things are going well and mysterious.
Yes, and fly through the air if you're hang gliding at the beach. Wish we were there.
But yeah, it's really good to just have the microphones up and to see lovely Jeff in a pair of headphones.
Say hi, Jeff.
Hi.
Jeff's still here.
It's good to be back, and it's let's talk about teaching and learning and just all things education.
It's really good to be back. I'm so glad that you reinvigorated our podcast, Kelly, and the three of us are still hanging out at NCC and able to do this, and I couldn't be happier with our first guest because she embodies so much of what we are now dealing with in this moment in teaching in higher ed, and that is AI, not the other thing.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness gracious.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to timestamp this. This is the 26th of February, 2025, and things have gone bat crazy. So, yeah.
So we'll probably get to that in a later episode. So
I hope so.
Yeah. So, but just so you know, we're all taking a page from Abby's book, as you will hear, and thinking about how we can treat ourselves.
Yes, absolutely.
When the work is done. Mm-hmm. But I guess we should introduce who Abby is, give a little background on Abby. She is one of our English faculty. Mm-hmm. She is also a poet, a published poet. Mm-hmm. And if you have the opportunity to come to our campus and walk through our beautiful East 40, you can take the poetry walk, where she has written poems that really place you in the setting of being out in nature and in East 40.
Yeah, that was a really cool experience. And in addition to all that, I just don't know how she does this. I feel like every meeting that I go into, it's like Abby's name is brought up. Oh, yeah, she's a part of that. She's a part of that. Holy crow. She's also, I forget what the title is, but she runs our honors program here at the college, and she's just doing fabulous work with that. And in addition to it, I know that she's a mama. She's got 2 beautiful little kids. She's a runner and just a fantastic colleague. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, me too. All right, let's get started.
Yes, I'm totally down. Let's do it.
If you had just one word to describe yourself as a teacher, what would it be?
Oh, crap. Okay, so Abby, welcome.
Thank you.
It's so great to have you here. It's just been so long since we've done this.
I know.
And I certainly wasn't here, but well, I guess by this time, according to the audience, we will have already covered this in our intro. So
true.
Hey, Gina. No. Okay. So, yes, again, thank you so much for being, a part of this show. As I was talking about earlier, just a great deal of, I guess, the time and energy in the discourse in higher ed right now is focused on AI. Again, for our listeners, I guess I got to do that rewind thing and try to recreate that magic. But the thing that I was talking about earlier is just that so many of the voices that we're hearing about AI in higher ed are generally those who don't think very highly of it, and certainly for good reasons. For myself personally, I feel that that the rhetoric can sometimes just shift a little too aggressively towards students, kind of like damning their character or the quality of their work because there's this mechanism out there for cheating and that they are going to exploit this and feelings are hurt, what have you. But we're just really excited to have you here because you spent a lot of time investigating not only kind of like the role that AI can have in higher ed, but just kind of like just all of the wonderful little nuances that it can play not only in their academic lives but also in their day-to-day lives. So I'm really just excited to learn more from you here today. So welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. And from what you just said, Kelly, really makes me realize how much faculty are kind of in this defensive crouch against AI and sort of trying to proactively prevent people from using it in nefarious ways. And you've been one person who's allowed me to relax out of my defensive crouch. So we definitely want to talk to you more about how you approach AI in your classes. You provided some really beautiful examples of assignments, and one of them specifically about how you use AI in the classroom. So I want to get to that definitely later. But we always start out our podcast with the first two questions, which is, what do you teach? So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I teach English 1 and 2, so 101 and 151L, and creative writing and Shakespeare.
Great. Thank you. And can you talk a little bit about what, for people who, like my friend Julie, hi Julie, my friend Julie in Seattle, who wouldn't necessarily know what is in English 1 or is in English 2?
Sure. So English 1 is really an introduction to college writing. So you're covering the basics. It definitely always has a research paper in it. How do you research and write about something? It is not necessarily focused on understanding a particular text, unlike other English classes. So like a Shakespeare class is about understanding Shakespeare, right? Or British Lit is about understanding British Lit. And even English 2L, the one that I teach, is Intro to Literature. So you are teaching literature. English 1 is more open than that. And you can kind of choose how you are going to approach writing in that class, although you definitely want them to have the basic skills for college writing coming out of it.
Definitely. And I think that's, again, where, that's a class that is a prerequisite for so many other classes that our students are taking in their first semester usually. To take Intro to Psych, you have to be English 1 ready. So it's really providing the scaffolding for pretty much all the other work, writing and understanding what they read for so many of our classes.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, so like the way that I used to be an English professor myself once upon a time, and the engagement that I try to have with that particular course and the relationship that I try to have with my students is understanding that what we're trying to do here is we're trying to learn how to engage in the broader academic community. Like people have been talking about stuff and writing about stuff for millennia. Now, this is your opportunity to kind of get in and then say what you think and how it relates to what others have said before you. And that comes in the form of writing with sources and what have you. But I really loved teaching that class because like you're introducing students to like this whole nother world, this whole other like community of thinkers and learners. So that's cool.
Yeah, they're joining that conversation. Did you ever have that analogy of inviting students into the cocktail party and all the sources are there talking to each other, and you say, you have to listen for a little while before you jump in, and then you get to jump in, and say what you think. And
Ooh,
I've tried that, and then they typically roll their eyes at me. But anywho, but yeah, that's cool. So so the next thing that we would like to ask you, and I don't know if you had a chance to kind of think about this beforehand because you did get the questions.
I did.
So if you had just one word to describe yourself as an educator, what would it be?
So I'm going to let my students speak for me on this one, because if I get a positive student review, most likely it contains a comment that says something to the effect of, she really cares, or she cares a lot. And so I'm going to own that and say I'm invested. I don't do everything perfectly. I don't pretend to. None of us can, right? But I definitely care. I care about my students. I care about their learning. I'm invested in the course and in them as individuals. I had a professor in grad school who used to say, we all have a superpower in teaching, and we can't pretend to have somebody else's superpower. Like, we all have something innate in us. And so I try to just tap into that, when I'm in the classroom, and I hope that that's what comes through.
I love that, because you've also sort of translated the she cares into investing, which is very active. And I think that's the sense I get from you as an instructor, is that you're actively investing in what the students are doing, that in a concrete way, which I think is really cool.
Thanks. I try to. And I think caring is the wrong word. Like, if you take care and turn it into caring, it's like, it sounds like a very sweet older lady or something, that I'm like, I don't know.
Right. Well, and it also sounds a little touchy-feely, like,
yeah,
I just care about you so much. And I think that students are recognizing that care means providing scaffolding and that you really want them to do well with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, where does that come from? Because not all of our colleagues approach the profession of teaching that way. And I'm not going to get like caught in the weeds or get caught talking shit outside of the house, but is this an under 17 podcast? Yeah.
You said it again.
Yeah, rewind.
Well, no, we can bleep that out. Yeah. But anyway, so like, where does that come from? So like, was there an experience that you had as a student where like perhaps you got to experience an educator like yourself, and like, how did that influence you?
Definitely. And actually it was right here at NCC. Mm-hmm. So I was a student here. I started going to school here at 23. I had been working full time and been on my own since I was 18. Didn't go to college, traveled around, and I found myself feeling a little bit lost at that age and kind of thinking like, what do I want to do with my life? And I decided to take some classes at my local community college, which was NCC. And that decision, more than any other, changed my life, because it totally changed the course of my life. And that was because of faculty here who saw something in me and encouraged in me and invested in me and said, I think you could really go places, or, you could do something with this. And they got behind me and came alongside me in ways that were unexpected and surprising to me, and really encouraged me, and honestly made me want to become one of them. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm here, I would say, is because I came in thinking maybe I'll be a teacher, maybe like secondary ed for something. And then I just loved higher ed, and I thought if I could have that kind of influence on somebody else, what greater honor, than to pass that along.
That's so cool. And it's a story I feel like we hear a lot at the community college here at NCC, is people who came back to school later, came back to school to do something else, or even are working here and now pursuing another degree. while working here, because there is something about this generative energy around, wow, this really changes people's lives. So that's so cool that you're an alumna of NCC and then back doing what you saw modeled for you.
Yeah, definitely. I feel lucky. And a lot of that was just very practical things. So when I was a student here and I knew that I wanted to become a professor, I started keeping this list of things that I was like, okay, these are cool things that faculty are doing that I want to do someday.
Oh, wow.
And here's things like definitely don't do. And I think I thought like, okay, by the time I get through grad school, I'll probably be really out of touch with what it's like to be a student at a community college. And I have that list still, and it's funny to go back and look at it because it's really pragmatic stuff. Like, it's just like, please don't assign a lot of homework between Monday and Wednesday or Tuesday and Thursday because people have work in between, or, practical things. Conference with students one-on-one, but a lot of people do that. It's nothing mind-blowing, but it made a huge difference to me. And I didn't necessarily find all of those considerations after I went on from NCC. So I think it is unique to the community college where we consider like people's lives and them as a person as a whole, rather than just like, okay, you're a student in my class right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can totally hear our colleagues at the four-year universities just being like, no, we do that too, but I don't know. But I don't know. I feel really good, I guess is the word that that I'll just throw out there, that you're thinking that way. So as a fellow educator, it's refreshing to hear one of my colleagues kind of like talk about kind of looking at things through the student's lens, the way that you are. But I'm really curious. You're saying that when you went to college that you had experiences that kind of went against, in a good way, the expectations that you had going into it. So I'm just curious, do you remember like what those expectations were?
Like what I thought college was? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so you're going into this thing, it's like, okay, this is what my life at college is going to be like. This is what my relationship with my professors is going to be like, with my peers and the work. And then you go in, and it's like, what? And then it's something different. But like, what were those expectations? And the reason I'm asking this is because, again, and this, I believe, will help us transition to our conversation about AI. Mm-hmm. And that is like, I don't think that we do enough of like really kind of like stepping out of our roles as educators and thinking about what is the experience for the student. Like, I know that we say that we do, and that there's all kinds of like research that administrations engage in to be like, well, our students are this age to this age, they have this kind of income, this is what their lives are like, but like really like what are they going through? So yeah, I was just wondering if like, I know it's been a little while, but like, do you remember like what those expectations were before you started going to college?
Yeah, I think I thought it would be somewhat boring and disconnected from the real world in a sense. Like, I remember when I graduated high school, I was very interested in doing something. I didn't want to sit anymore and, read and write in a classroom and be confined. I wanted to get out and travel and make a difference in my own way in the world. And I didn't feel like college was the right path for that. But as it turns out, I think it is, obviously, for me. Mm-hmm. And it's a wonderful thing to be a part of because it is so connected to the real world, especially at community college.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's true. That's so interesting because I went back to undergrad 10 years after I had graduated originally and had not, had a stellar record from from that first go round because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I just was kind of on those railroad tracks. And similar to you, I through experiences and volunteer work and things I was doing at my work, I thought, gosh, maybe I want to go back and dig into psychology, and maybe I would want to teach it somewhere. And I encountered that first semester I went back, two of my professors that summer brought me to their lab, but I would also see him coming back from the tennis court with his tennis racket, this other professor. But it was just so interesting how they were really interested in studying what was happening in the world, and as opposed to it being this ivory tower, right, of, oh no, we just study this stuff and you sit and you listen and you write it all down. So I feel like I kind of had a similar thing too, where it was like, oh, wait, now that I'm in the world, I want to learn more about the world, but I want my learning process to be engaged with the world too. It sounds like you got that at the community college.
Totally. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, that's very cool.
And it's become a commercial for community colleges. It is, man.
Our check is in the mail.
Today's episode has been sponsored by community colleges. Okay. So like we're talking about the experiences of students and just trying to kind of like, try to understand their lives and the lenses through which they understand the role of higher ed in their lives, but then also kind of like their role in engaging in academic work. And as I had said earlier, like the big talking point is AI. So I was wondering if you could maybe just talk with us a little bit about like your relationship with AI in teaching, and then we'll just learn from you as to what you're doing in the classroom and why you're doing that.
And I'll just say, and we did ask you if you had any assignments that you thought were really that you're really proud of, and one of them that you shared with us is just blows my socks off, if that's the expression.
Well, thanks.
Because it is using AI to explore character analysis in literature. So you could use that as a jumping off point, or however you'd like to start talking about, your process with AI in the class.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this character analysis project was born out of a desire to move into more multimodal writing, and also as a reaction to ChatGPT coming out a few years back. ChatGPT coming out changed a lot of things in the writing classroom, whether we wanted it to or not, I think. And I understand colleagues who feel upset about it. You were talking about that earlier, Kelly, about some people who feel, just upset that this is happening and suspicious of student work all of a sudden and all of that. And as a poet and writer myself, there is a mourning process, I think, for like what was, is no longer, it's no longer there in the same way. It doesn't mean it's not there, not important. It's just, it's changed, it's impacted by this new technology. And so I tried to take that feeling in myself and sort of do something about it. Like, okay, well, it's here, whether I like it or not. Like, what are we going to do, And this project, this character analysis project, used to be a character analysis essay, which is pretty standard in English too, I would say, where you explore a character, you analyze them, you try to understand them. It was my first essay that students would write in that course, and it became relatively easy to use ChatGPT to write it. And so I thought, well, multimodal writing in more than one mode using, graphics, visuals, another form, is really important in this day and age anyway. So I'm going to take it and turn it visual with Canva. So this character analysis essay became the project that you were talking about, where instead of writing the essay, they instead analyze the character and add a visual component in Canva and design like a series of flyers or pamphlets or however they interpret that. And the students in the last couple of years of doing this project have totally blown me away. I mean, I feel like I set them free. Like, it's just like instead of shackling them to the essay form, which definitely has its place, like nothing wrong with the essay, but when they are able to analyze the character through other ways of writing about that character, what they produce is better. It's deeper, it's stronger, it's more analytical. They provide better arguments for what they want to say because they can say it in a different way, in a more creative way. And then this last semester, finally getting to the AI part, I introduced a bot to this project. And this is for an honors version of the class, so it's a little bit beefier. And basically what the students are doing currently, this project is due in a week as we're taping this now, they are taking all of that analysis that they did and then designing a character bot based on the character and the way that they understand that character to act and be in a Nectar AI bot. So NCC is piloting Nectar, which is a type of large language model in certain classes this semester, and we're lucky enough to be able to try it in my Honors English 2 class. And it's a closed LLM, so the bots that the students are creating, that bot only has the information that they feed it. So the character should then be able to answer questions about itself, like, why did you do those actions, or what do you think about this? So it's an analysis, but it's kind of alive in the bot itself.
That's so cool. So it's basically like a chat bot, or is there a visual, like an avatar or anything like that? Or
there's no avatars in Nectar currently.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a chat bot, and they also still have the visual component of this project as well. So
okay, that's great.
Yeah,
I'm really excited to see what they produce, to hear what the results are when they turn it in. And so I've also you mentioned this multimodal writing, and that's something I've been trying to take in, slowly gleaning this from colleagues like yourself and other, especially people who are teaching writing. And so for my research methods class, I'm having them hand draw diagrams of experimental design or scatter plots, and then take a picture, because it's an asynchronous, completely online class. We never meet live, but they're taking pictures of it and uploading it to the discussion board, and then they talk to each other about it. These discussion boards are unbelievable.
That's awesome.
And their diagrams are so well done. And whenever I produce an example for my students of a new assignment, you probably do this too. I'm like, okay, if I were doing this assignment, what would I do? And then I know what I'm sort of expecting from them.
Right.
But I always try to do like a B- version of the assignment. So I'm not, it's like, this is good enough. This is what I'm looking for. Their diagrams are so much better than my example.
Oh,
yeah.
That's so cool.
So it's really, you were mentioning how some people are really afraid, but also looking at this as an opportunity as well. I think, Kelly, you're looking skeptical.
Well, it's not. I'm sorry. It's my podcast face. No, but as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking about our colleagues, and not just here at the community college, but colleagues at other institutions who are skeptical about this. I'm thinking about them because, Abby, I got to say, Nectar and Metabots, and that's kind of how I'm understanding it. Like a bot who is I don't know, aware of themselves. I'm like, what? It's a lot. And I'm trying to be kind of very aware of the NC-17 language that I'm supposed to be using, because it's a lot, to the point that it's scary. I'm a little I'm not scared. It's not oh man, this is bad. Because I think it's fascinating, but also as someone who, when I first started teaching, and I'm not old by any stretch of the means, so for all you listening out there, I'm 48 years old. But when I started teaching, I walked around with a toolbox, a for real toolbox filled with crayons and glue sticks and scissors and highlighters and all kinds of other stuff, and it was just very physical, that kind of work. And I don't know, I just hearing you talk about this, it's overwhelming. And it's exciting, but also it's so far removed from what I do and how I engage with students that, it's scary. and I'll get into some of my other fears later, but yeah, like we could just, because like I hope that we have the time to talk about that session. And I'm not going to derail us too much here, but that session that you did during our opening days kind of series. And for those of you who do not work at Northampton Community College, opening days is 2 days of meetings where we're learning about what the heck is going on in the college, and then we have these great opportunities to sit in a classroom and learn from our colleagues about what's going on. But yeah, there's you and some of our colleagues. I think Jeff, you were there as well, and the whole like AI podcast thing like really kind of scared the living crap out of me.
Yeah, that was Zach DePiero.
But we'll get to that later. So. Where the hell were we?
Well, you did give me a lead into kind of a next question.
Sweet.
And I also want to say, my example is low tech. It's no tech, right? It's a pen and paper. But I guess the reason I brought it up, other than narcissism apparently, is that it's just recognizing that all of these tools that these bots are just another tool. Mm-hmm. And I think we get scared because you used the term metabot, which I've never heard before, and now I'm afraid of it, or self-aware bots. But I think that's part of what the fear is we're not understanding what these tools are, as opposed to recognizing, oh, actually, this is just a fun way to explore how a character would think in this literature I'm reading, and yes, it is on a computer, and yes, it does seem like the computer's talking to me, but fundamentally it's just another tool in our toolbox, so to speak.
Oh, I see how you did that. Well done, Gina. Okay, but like Abby, you had said that because of this, it's like now all of a sudden like faculty are like super skeptical of the work that students are turning in, but like I would kind of push back on that or argue against it, because like faculty have been suspicious of students' work for as long as I've been a student, so prior to this, it was like Wikipedia, and then like, I'm trying to think, like when I was going to college in the like early 90s, it was like, what was the way that we were cheating back then? I don't know. It was just like plagiarism just in general, that like, this writing can't be yours. It's like you went to a journal and you copied it. And it was just like all this, like, I don't know, like why are faculty just so skeptical of students? I think that's perhaps another podcast. But anyways, I offered you a transition and then I totally derailed.
No, that's fine. And I mean, I guess to that, skepticism is, I think it comes back to us being really invested, right? We really want our students' brains to be growing in partnership with us, and anything that feels like it could stand in the way, I think, is what's scary. But the transition I wanted to make actually was to your low to no tech assignment, and it comes back to this idea of being invested in your students, because you also shared with us this beautiful poem by a poet who I wasn't familiar with. And of course, you're a poet as well. But this is a poem that you use as a teaching artifact with your students. And I just want to read the ending because I think it's so beautiful, and I might get teary-eyed again.
Sure.
But the poem is called People's Faces, and the poet is K. Tempest. And the end of the poem is, even when I'm weak and I'm breaking, I stand weeping at the train station because I can see your faces. There's so much peace to be found in people's faces. I love people's faces. And I think the poem is beautiful, and it's about how we can still ground ourselves in the world through relationship and through recognizing each other's as humans. And I think that that's the sort of interesting bridge I think you are building between technology and new technology, but also just these human beings who are sitting in your classroom.
Thanks. Yeah, I really do love this piece. And I have to say, K. Tempest would probably recognize themselves as a songwriter. So it's my interpretation to say it's kind of a poem. So I gave that to you as sort of a poetic piece. And so, I take the blame for that one because they do perform it to music, but it's so poetic and it rides that line between poetry and song. And I think students often find poetry most accessible through song lyrics first. And so even though they're two different genres, I think there's a lot that rides that line. And this is one of those that really rides the line between, poetry and song. And I love it so much because it's the way that students make me feel as far as like the hopeful message in it. I mean, it starts off saying our country's coming apart, the whole world's becoming such a bumbling farce, like this feeling of hopelessness. And who doesn't feel that sometimes, right? Like no matter where you are in your political beliefs or no matter what you think, you turn on the news and it's depressing, and you think like, oh God, the whole world is becoming such a bumbling farce. And it's hard. And yet, I get to work with these wonderful people every day when I come into work and I walk into class who are there, and they have all their own experiences that they bring and their own perspectives. And I get to watch that mingle with whatever content we're discussing. And it gives me hope, really. I mean, it's that piece makes me tear up sometimes. And it's that hope that I feel from the students that I get to work with that's like, yeah, but this is where we're going, right? Like we all, we have this hope, we can keep going.
Yeah. And I apologize, you had even mentioned that, and I watched the YouTube video of them performing the poem. And Bob Dylan won the Nobel Prize for Literature, so he's a songwriter, but it's still recognized. We were talking in a meeting, it was a tangent, but we were sort of talking about why we still teach students Shakespeare, and someone made the point, why aren't we teaching them Kendrick Lamar? Because the intricacies of what he's doing with language, are some of the same things that we value in what a Shakespeare is doing. So just,
totally.
The lyrics of music, I think it's important for us to recognize maybe we do kind of, I don't know, put things into boxes and say, this is real literature, and this is what we teach, and this is the canon, and things like that. So I guess that's that makes me really think about is, to be able to bring something like this work into the classroom and validate it as pedagogically, informative and sound. Sort of what that makes me think about.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize, too, that sometimes pieces of literature that we think of as like older literature now, they were pretty groundbreaking when they were first introduced. Like, I think To Kill a Mockingbird started being taught in school as like it was new. Like, it was like, oh, look at this new book, right? And let's talk about it, let's teach it. And now it's like this part of this canon, right? And we haven't really updated like the canon sometimes. So I'm a big fan of teaching things that I would want to read and talk about, including like current stuff. Yeah.
So Jeff just gave us a time check. Thank you, Jeff. But I do just before we move on to kind of, I think we have two more questions that we'd like to dive into. There is one thing that's kind of in the back of my mind, and I'm curious to kind of going back to the AI, I'd like to learn from you, is that there is like plenty of research that has already been conducted that talks about kind of the cognitive disadvantages of people kind of engaging with knowledge and learning through a virtual kind of AI world. So specifically, there was a piece I listened to on the radio the other day that I think it was 2024. People read fewer books in that year than since the time that they started counting that. So who knows when the hell that was. But then they started talking about like why that's problematic. Now, granted, like I come from the school of thought, it's like, well, just because people aren't reading books does not mean that they're not reading.
Right.
So folks are engaging with the reading and writing of text, like far more than people had in previous generations. However, it's the kind of reading and writing that we're doing that is having a not so cool impact on our ability to comprehend larger ideas within kind of their presence within other larger ideas. And this comes down to the fact that people are, as I said, reading fewer books, and specifically they're reading fewer like physical books, because I guess there's something else about like reading them on the screens, or like I'm a huge fan of audiobooks, but like that's another level of it as well. But then they even talked a bit about kind of the potential hazards, the cognitive hazards and comprehension hazards of then actually writing these ideas themselves rather than through the assistance of some kind of like AI, what have you. So I'm just curious, because while we have you here, I want to ask this question. Damn it, and that is like, how are you taking that into consideration as you essentially like you're championing the use of AI as a learning tool?
Yeah. It's a great question.
Sense?
Yeah, totally.
Thanks. It took me a while to get there, but there you go.
Yeah, so. It totally makes sense. It's a huge concern, a valid concern. And I try to be careful in my own approach not to compromise critical thinking when I integrate AI into an assignment. And what that looks like is I have my students write critiques of ChatGPT writing. Where they copy and paste the ChatGPT output into a Google Doc, and then they comment on it on the side, which LLMs currently, generative AI, can't really do very well. So they have to do it, and then they write up their critique. I've had students do comparative analysis between a previous student's work. Like, let me show you what a journal response from 4 years ago looked like pre-AI, right? And then let me show you what AI produces. And what do you think? What do you notice about the differences here? And they're both discussing the same story. And there are differences, and students are pretty good at picking that up. And so I'm attempting to engage with AI in ways that doesn't compromise that critical thinking, but also doesn't, ignore AI or shut it out or try to pretend, like, okay, we're going to just pretend it doesn't exist or something, because it's here, right?
Yeah, totally.
Regardless.
It's a beautiful illustration, again, of like, it is kind of a neutral tool. How do we still adhere to the values of critical thinking, of information literacy with this new tool? So, yeah. And I think that really does lead to, the next question, which is, you are someone on our campus who is really advocating for how we can mindfully, and productively incorporate AI into our work. What do you see in terms of higher ed, in terms of this profession? What's missing? What might you want to change or address as we move forward? And it doesn't necessarily have to just be around AI, but since you are sort of at the forefront of that, what other things might you think about could be, changed or adjusted?
I don't have one specific answer, I'll say, but I think that I want to keep moving forward the way that we are, which I think is cautious and intentional and exploratory with artificial intelligence. I think those are all good things. Like, we should be cautious. There are some ethical concerns, there's valid concerns, but we also should engage with it, and we should do research on it and with it and engage students with it, because we need this AI literacy in our world, whether we're going to use it or not. You need to know, what it's about, and make that decision intentionally and with literacy, right? Like, understanding what the AI is and what it can do and all of that, and so that you can make the best decision that you can, whether or not to use it and how to use it. So I think, just keep going in the direction that we are slowly, slowly but surely.
It just makes me think of this book I just started reading called I Contain Multitudes, and it's about the microbiome. I know, and I quote Walt Whitman all the time. That's like one of my favorite little pieces of literature is, do I contradict myself? Very well. Yes. I can contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes.
Love it.
So he's using that just to talk about our own microbiome. And the reason I bring it up is because he goes through in one of the earlier chapters the history of understanding, bacteria and microbes and things. And that there was a point where a scientist kind of discovered that these microbes are everywhere, and the other scientific community, I'm paraphrasing, were like, who cares? Like, why would we study this? And it's just so funny how sometimes it's out of fear, or it's out of just like, this doesn't belong in this sphere, you know? Why would we worry about microbes when we're really trying to understand the human body, right? Which is, of course, so ironic now that we know about that symbiosis. But similarly, I think there are people who would like to ignore the AI. Like, this is just, you know, kind of to what you were saying, Kelly. Well, this is antithetical. Is that the word? Antithetical to critical thinking, as opposed to going, well, wait a minute, it's here. Let's at least try and figure out how it connects and why. So, that's great.
Yeah. Some of the best people to talk to about that, I think, are people who are going into computer science, like our students here who are just, they have such good intentions and they're so excited about AI. And you're like, I've told students, I'm so glad people like you are going into this field, because it gives me hope. Like, that, you know, there's going to be good bots, right? And like people doing the right things with this technology. And that's where I hope it goes. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's going to be good bots. All right.
Well, I think we're pretty much at the end of our list of questions, sadly, but this is a fun question. And of course, I always have to rearrange it, because the question is, tell us a guilty pleasure that your fellow faculty and colleagues don't know about you. And then I always have to say, but don't feel guilty about it.
Well, this is hard because I feel like I have a lot of guilty pleasures. I think guilty pleasures make life worth living in a lot of ways.
Amen.
But I'll say this. I'm a little bit like a dog or a cat in that when I do the hard work, I want a treat, you know? My cats are very much like that, and I'm no different. So at the end of every semester, I try to take a treat day where I go and get a pedicure. I might do some like consignment or thrift store shopping, take a good book out to lunch, you know, or a friend, and just generally like do something fun instead of doing what I should be doing as a, you know, adulting in some way. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm going to take a page from that book. Definitely.
You should.
Yes. Boo adulting.
Yes. Down with adulting.
Down with adulting. Hashtag
Is that the
down
title
with
of our episode?
It could be. It could be.
No, we'll see. But yeah, thank you so much for being a part of this. It's just great to be back behind the microphone. And I don't think that we could have picked a better topic or had a better guest for this kickoff episode. So thank you so much, Abby, for being a part of this.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.
Oh, it's been a delight, an utter delight. So thank you again. Pedagogy a go-go. Pedagogy go, go, go.
Oh, man.
Oh, goodness.
Well, that was amazing. Like,
yes.
I just really... I couldn't have imagined a more perfect guest for our return episode, and just the things that she is doing with AI, and specifically in the environment that we find ourselves in higher ed, specifically with just the encroachment of AI in not only the faculty's lives but students' lives. It's just it's phenomenal what she's doing.
And with such a good spirit as well, like a spirit of inquiry and of looking on the positive side of how we will continue to engage with, even if we don't fully embrace it, but continue to engage with all of these changes in technology as we go forward. Because that's really our job as educators, right?
Yeah.
So she's very inspiring. I do also want to shout out again, because Abby is part of a team, a task force on AR at our college. Jeff Armstrong is also an illustrious member of that task force. So, just kudos maybe. Again, I'm not getting paid to advertise how great our college is, but kudos to our college for really embracing the work of Abby and others who are trying to help us to grapple with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's like what I've like learned from her, not even, you know, just from the conversation that we had today, but also from conversations that I've had with her, like, you know, in the hallway or like during that opening day session, like it's just, I feel hopeful. And that's like one of the things that she brought up is, you know, in regards to her relationship with students, but like, you know, Abby and what she's doing with this gives me hope that like we're gonna still be able to do like the good work, and we're going to be able to do it in new and really kind of fascinating ways.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm pumped. But I got to admit though, so going back to that opening days session, I don't know if either of you recall. Were you at that session, Gina?
No, I had a conflict.
Wait, no. Oh, actually, no, you were, because I remember you and I both had the same visceral, like, is visceral the right word? I don't know. We had the same, like, response to the AI podcast generator thing.
Yes.
Like, where they took the opening day's agenda and fed it to this thing, and then there's these two voices creating a podcast about opening days, and like I was just terrified and then also like embarrassed like at how predictable people are, that we can create these like generative tools to mimic what we do. I
do remember I was there and I dropped an F-bomb in responding because, I had the same. Yeah, I do remember that now. Maybe I blocked it out because of the trauma.
Yeah. So then like coming in here, it's like, okay, so like we're getting back into our podcast. How can we not be that, you know? And like with the whole like banter thing, and, you know, I'm just thinking about past podcasts that I've listened to, and like the things that I thought were interesting little performances. The Ologist, which I don't know if either of you listen to The Ologist, but it's a great podcast. But like the host is incredible, but you could tell that she has really fine-tuned her craft so that like when you're listening to it and then like the guest will say something, she'll be like, oh. And it's like just something about like her responding like that makes you go, ooh, yeah, I'm interested too. And that AI tool like did the same things, and I was like, damn you for like just, I don't know, like taking something that I thought was so like beautiful and cool and making it predictable and ugh.
Well, you know, this makes me think of one more aspect to this, which is the fact that we are here recording our podcast in person. So we're sitting across the table from us, recognizing the value of being human beings in space together. I think that's another thing that Abby really highlights in what she's talking about. And I have to read another little chunk of the poem that she shared. I'm sorry, the song by Kay Tempest. These lines here: even when I'm weak and I'm breaking, I stand weeping at the train station because I can see your faces. There is so much peace to be found in people's faces. I just think that's so beautiful. And I think that that's, as long as we continue to center our humanity in these things, you know, yes, we are also predictably bad in so many ways, but we can also be sort of predictably good if we're mindful of it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think like kind of going to the anecdote that I just shared is that like AI really kind of shows us our predictability in like the performances we make for things that might not be genuine. And I'm not saying that like the host of The Ologist is not being genuine, but in this kind of information saturated world that we live in, like to kind of get your voice kind of above the noise, sometimes people engage in these kind of performative behaviors that otherwise they would not engage in. You know, so it's like I feel that, you know, does AI show us how we are not being genuine? So, man, that's way too deep for whatever morning this is. But anywho, so, but I'm really just excited to see one of our colleagues and one of our fellow kind of learners, educators, that is not getting kind of dragged down by all kind of the negative rhetoric around AI. I mean, she's certainly heeding their warning, or not like the haters, their warning, but like she can recognize the dangers of using this tool inappropriately, and she's helping her students kind of navigate that very, very tricky landscape. And at our college, which is the best college, is very fortunate to have her kind of doing that work for us and kind of sharing this information.
Exactly. Yeah. And I love that she shared that the students recognize that she really cares and that she's invested in their ability to navigate these choppy waters.
Yeah, like using AI does not mean that there's an absence of humanity.
Right.
And she really kind of like brought that to the forefront. And I got to learn like some, like, what was that, Nectar and bots doing body things and...
And it'll all change in 2 months.
Lottie-dottie,
so.
I like my body, but I don't know.
I like to party.
So
that's the level at which Kelly and I are engaging with AI.
Yeah, it's like like I had made a joke during opening days, I believe it was, where like someone was saying like AI is everywhere, and it's like, well, I work in this off-grid space where like unless you have your phone out and you're online, like AI is not there.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can engage in both of these spaces, and I think that that diverse engagement is a healthy thing.
Yeah.
Because if not, we're just really, I don't know, missing out on opportunities for growth, both as a community, but then also intellectually.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Fantastic.
So yeah, that was a great first episode.
Yay.
And I'm looking forward to the next, Gina.
Me too.
All right.
Thanks,
cool.
co-host.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for all your our listeners out there, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to Pedagogy A Go-Go, recorded in the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Technology at Northampton Community College in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Our producer in all things technology is Jeff Armstrong. If you've got any questions, please send them to pedagogyagogo@gmail.com, and be sure to follow us on social media at pedagogyagogo, and click into our bio for copies of podcast transcripts, guest assignments, and other useful tidbits. Until next time, this is Gina and Kelly saying we hope your day is filled with wonderful learning experiences.